Welcome to the Lida Citroën podcast, your space to grow your influence and elevate your personal brand. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical strategies to help you stand out, lift up others, and leave your mark on your team, your community, or the world. If you're ready to make your voice heard, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Well, hello, friends. I hope this message is finding you doing well, enjoying the season, enjoying your life, and ready for a really fun conversation. I am so glad you're here today for the Lida Citroën podcast because we've got a really special message. If I were to ask you how many hats you wear, and I don't mean baseball hats, cowboy hats, sun hats, I mean, that's my collection. But how many hats you wear on a daily basis, whether you are a boss and you have to sometimes delegate and sometimes do the work, whether you're a working parent and so you're juggling kids and schedules and doctor's appointments and your work duties that provide that paycheck. There's so many different examples of how we wear different hats. Some of us actually wear different hats because we have different companies that we lead. And I remember years ago, actually in 2009, when I started working with the military. And if you've watched my TED Talk, you know the story. But I started working with the military because I really felt passionate about serving those who had served our country in the United States. And I found a way to give back to a community I care a lot about. And I started talking a lot about it on social media. I was excited about being able to coach and mentor and give speaking programs and start writing for military.com on the topic of transition. And I was doing all of this, and somebody reached out to me and said, "Oh, I think it's so great how you've moved your company to working with the military." And I panicked because my work with the military is 99.9% pro bono. There's a tiny bit where if a company hires me to give a presentation, I get paid. And I panicked because Lida 360 is a for-profit. My work with the military is a give back. And I thought, am I wearing too many hats? Am I splitting my brand up in a way that is confusing to the market? And I had to adjust that. I have clients or I've been contacted by people who say, I have this franchise business, but I also have this other company that, employs me. How do I promote both? And that dynamic of wearing different hats professionally can sometimes be a tricky landscape to navigate. Couple years ago, a colleague and I decided to found and start a company, a small company that works with college students coming out of university who are starting their career. We call it Career Launch Navigators. And I went through the same thing again. How do I promote this company, which is actually doing really, really well, in the work that we do helping students with their branding and their resumes and all that? How do I promote that but still maintain my business brand? And that's a struggle that my guest today knows a lot about. And she has navigated it so elegantly and so beautifully that even if you don't have multiple companies, but you wear many hats, you have different responsibilities that sometimes might look like they're competing. How do you manage how you promote yourself, how you show up, and how you build a brand for yourself when you have all these different ventures? So let me introduce her. Today's guest is a wonderful example of what it looks like to actually build an authentic brand across multiple industries, businesses, and passions while remaining fully herself. Rani Alfers is a professional who wears those many hats. I would love to see your hat collection. She is a multifaceted entrepreneur, business owner, and podcast host whose work is rooted in one powerful mission: helping people simplify the hard things so they can focus on what matters most in life. With more than 20 years in the insurance industry, Rani has built her career around protecting people's dreams, families, and futures. But beyond insurance, she is also the owner of EMK Skincare, a global skincare brand, and the host of Working Women Mentor podcast, where she highlights women creating meaningful lives and careers, sharing their mentorship journeys. And that's actually where I met Rani, and absolutely just adore her from that conversation. Rani brings a unique perspective on building a personal brand that remains clear, credible, and deeply human across multiple industries and passions. Welcome, Rani. That is a
Yeah. Wow. I love it. Thank you.
you are a busy lady, and I absolutely love that line, helping people simplify the hard things so they can focus on what matters most in life.
That is so true. There's so much that matters to
Ugh.
all of us, right?
When you think about your career and how you got here,
Yes,
give us
well,
the highlight
first,
reel.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. We did connect so much during our podcast, and I just
I love
absolutely am excited to be here and with your audience today. So, I'm Rani Alfers, a beautiful introduction. I'm an entrepreneur. I am the owner of EMK Skincare, a science-backed skincare line focused on longevity. I also am the host of Working Women Mentor podcast, and I have an insurance agency in Texas. I'm also a mom. I am a
Wow.
traveler. I'm a wine lover. I love a meaningful life, and right now I'm slightly AI obsessed, Lita,
Me
and
too.
I'm doing everything I can to create a meaningful life for myself and my son at this moment.
So how did you get here? Did you set out to intentionally have such, I mean, you don't just have multiple ventures. You have multiple ventures in very different areas, right? Podcasts, skincare, insurance,
I do.
mom, wine. How did that come to be? Give us the
You know,
highlight.
Alita, it's very simple. I love to work. I just sometimes people say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I just work." It's almost boils down to that.
Mhm.
But I have always had an incredible work ethic and a lot of curiosity, and that's really where it started. I also knew that I wanted to have a life that I could depend on myself, that I could create something of myself that was meaningful to me, that I enjoyed every day. I did not want to show up every day to something that does not feel right, and I've known that my entire life, and maybe not exactly what it should be,
Yeah.
but that driving spirit has really led me to find what my talents are, what my interests are, and then run with them.
And that's fascinating because your businesses are so different. One of the things I know when we were starting Career Launch Navigators that I was able to sort of rationalize or find was a through line, right?
Mm.
So I help professionals. I do executive coaching. I'm a professional speaker. I found a through line to the work of working with students, working with early career professionals, and was able to sort of bridge it in that way, and I wouldn't say justify, but kind of explain it in that way. And so I'm curious, your businesses are so diverse. How do you find that through line?
They are, and that is a great question because I'm asked all the time that exact question. And honestly, it's finding the single thread for me of what my strengths are. I mean, it's really, really simple. It sounds like it could be complex, but we all, no matter if it's a skill that we have at home, if it's a skill
Mhm.
that we have at our book club, wherever it is with our friend group, there is a skill that we have that we can leverage in many different areas. And we often overlook that. We
Mm.
often think that it relates to the book club. We don't realize that it could relate to a banking situation or a finance situation or another type of business or industry. And we often put ourselves in a box for
Mm.
too long. And I think once you discover what it is you enjoy, what it is that you feel like you have a strength in, or at
Mhm.
least you want to improve in or evolve in, where you think your talents could find benefit and find a return. I think that you go for it. You just go for it and you don't worry if it's a book club or a cheesecake club. You
Yeah.
you just go to the
Ooh,
club and
cheesecake.
you use your talents.
Where do you find this cheesecake club thing?
I don't
That
know. I
sounds
like cheesecake.
were they cheesecake and wine. Were there ever businesses that you looked at and they didn't align with your mission and your values and you passed?
Yeah, that is absolutely several
Okay.
over many years. Even currently, I've looked at some that I'm like, maybe because it's the business model that is not of interest to me. Maybe I feel
Mhm.
like I have a strength, but it doesn't just align with my energy right now. But I can think of the very first opportunity that I had to actually open a business when I moved to Dallas originally, and it wasn't the right time for me financially. It wasn't the right time for me um, to not to have to, at that point, I would have had to depend on someone else somewhat. That
Mhm.
wasn't the right timing for me to do that or to let myself do that. I really wanted to find my own way.
Mhm.
Not that it was the wrong business, but it was the wrong timing in my life. And so synchronizing sometimes the business with the season you're in is important, because what might be good for me today might not be good work for me in 5 to 10 years from now.
And this question kind of came to me as you were talking. You're well known. Your podcast, Working Woman Mentor podcast, is phenomenal. And I would say men listen to it because the
Yes.
advice is beautiful, and women definitely subscribe, listen to it. It's great. Um, have you, because you're well known, your podcast is so successful, your insurance agency is doing so well, do you ever find that people want to align or attach to you to sort of ride the coattails, ride the wave? And have you ever had to maybe pass on an opportunity because you brought more to the table than they did, or you know what I mean? Something along those lines?
Yeah, for sure. And I think also there's two ways to look at that sometimes, is that one, they want to attach to something that they're really not sure what it is. It's people
Mhm.
have this idea in their mind about other people, right? It's really like, oh, she might be interested in that. She'd be perfect for that. We may have a conversation. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with this,
Yeah.
but they think I would,
Right.
because of, so these sort of false assumptions we might have about some people, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think sometimes when those instances come around, I'm so open to everything. I love when people reach out. I absolutely have some very dear friends right now that I've met because they sent me a message on Instagram and they're just like, "Hey, let's align." But
Yeah.
projects are different. Committing your time to something is different. Committing your money to something is different, and your talent to something. And
And
so
your
I
name.
think,
And your name.
yeah, and your
Yeah.
name. And so I think, oh, I spent a lot of time on. I tried something once, and Lita, I spent some time on it. It was a women's, group, and it was highly focused on bringing folks together in our Dallas community. And they brought very little to the table. And but I tried it. I believed in the cause.
Yeah, and the hard thing, and I've been there too, two different times.
Yeah.
One, I really wasn't paying attention. I mean, this was someone who sounded so confident, and she wanted my personal branding lift to match up with her program, and we were going to market this together. And I admit, I really didn't pay attention. I didn't read the stuff as closely as I should have, and it was very uncomfortable to unwind when I finally did realize, uh-oh,
This doesn't work.
she's trying, yeah, this is
Yeah.
intellectual property that I'm giving away. And um, you learn that, and then it's hard to trust the next time. And I'm glad I did, because my business partner and I on the side business, like, we have a great relationship. We complement each other. We both bring skills to the table. And it's hard if you've had that bad experience like yours to, when the next one comes along, to go, I'm going to go in with an open mind.
You're like, yes, I really am going to go in with it. Tell myself 3 times and jump up and down. Yeah, it's hard to not become jaded. To your point, it's
Yeah.
hard to not become limited. And I would say to that, push yourself to to open your eyes. I mean, so you learned a lesson. I certainly learned a lesson. Without that experience, I wouldn't be able to apply it to the next opportunity that's around the corner. So it happens.
So let's go back to this idea of wearing different hats, right? You added in, which I forgot. Not only are you a business owner of multiple businesses, but you're also a mom, and that
Yes.
itself is a full-time job. It's arguably the most important job. And how do you balance so many different priorities?
Well, my son is always a priority. How that looks in every day is different, though,
Mhm.
because with his dad and I share him 50%. So, we split our time together, and sometimes there's time when we're all together. But I have to allocate my time when I'm not with him and commit that in certain areas. My fiance, my personal life,
Yeah.
in intense projects I'm working on. And then when I'm with him, I try to be more present. I mean, I try to structure my life around that time, quite
Mhm.
frankly. But that's not always doable. So when I have him, I make a point to cook dinner at night with him. He loves that. He's acts of service. He loves the time together. So
Mhm.
whether it's, dinner and maybe a game after dinner or a movie, that's our time and it's protected. Am I working until the moment I put the chicken in the oven? Yes. Am I on a Zoom call with a chicken in the oven? Potentially, but
Yeah.
I make sure I get those pieces in my life that are most important to me and the people in them. And then everything else around there just sort of works out, Lita. I find when you
Yeah.
start really figuring out, I know every Wednesday and Thursday, for example, I'm making dinner. I have a plan for that. And
Mhm.
and I still have the calls, I still have the workload, but this piece is important to my son and I'm going to do that.
I love that, and he will benefit from that, and you benefit from being present, and I think that's what I'm hearing you say is it's like when you're focused on this business, you're present in that business. When you're focused on the next business or the venture or, community, you're present. And so often, and you see this, right? How many times have we gone to a restaurant and you see people like having dinner together and everybody's on their phones?
Yeah,
It's so
we there's an
you're present.
Italian place we visit in Dallas often, Lita, and we people stop by our table because we're usually playing a game of Uno. It I don't know about you all, but for 11, 12, 13-year-old boy, they don't really want to talk about my day. They don't really want to talk about their day. They don't want to talk about much. And so our language has been the game of Uno. So it stays in my car. We bring it out and we're the two sitting there playing Uno at dinner. And people are like, "Oh my goodness, I haven't
Mhm.
played that game since I was, but we tease each other and
Yeah.
we have our moments and it's that present. He's not on his tablet, I'm not on my phone. And by the way, that's so much better than having 30 minutes of that rather than 2 hours of us sitting next to each other but disconnected on our phone. So you take those times of presence and you get so much leverage out of them versus times of distance.
Your voice matters. My new book, The New Rules of Influence, shows you how to build long lasting impact with authenticity, no tie or title required. Get your copy of the book today and start owning your voice. You and I were talking ahead of this meeting and this conversation, and you said something about the trap of the professional voice. And I want to
Mm.
go to that because I thought that was really interesting that, when we have these conversations and we try to be someone we're not, which is honestly, we're not being present. We assume this professional voice. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I feel with in my businesses and training people and training salespeople and just being around someone who's new at something or approaching something that they haven't before that they have discomfort with, I always notice a change of voice. And
Mhm.
we all have a different nuance about how we approach a room, right? There should be some different nuances in there, but I find that often people lose themselves
Mhm.
in that room. And there doesn't, I mean, we don't have to have a rainy voice, a professional voice, and a rainy personal voice.
Yeah.
If you hear me in my office, it is the same voice. It
Yeah.
is, I'm usually laughing too loudly about something, or, I'm intense about something. Like, I'm the same person.
Hmm.
And I think if we could spend a little less energy trying to be this person that we're really not, or
Right.
trying to have that professional voice that is uncomfortable to us as well, and doesn't sound warm and
Yeah.
friendly at all, then we could really be more comfortable in these rooms that we walk into. So
Yeah.
it
I
stands
hear you.
out to me because we've all felt uncomfortable in a room, no doubt about it. We all have. But it's I think as we age, as we learn, understanding that what people want to see in this room is actually you. It's not the version of you that you've tried to craft and make and create. It's you.
And the fact that you say that, I mean, it really resonates, because I've shared a lot that I spent 20 years being who I thought people wanted me to be
You have,
professionally.
yes,
And I would
yes.
come home and like the makeup came off, the clothes switched out, and I was like, oh, I finally get to be myself. And that is really hard. Can we do it? Absolutely. I was a working mom, I was all these things, but when I went to work, I tried so hard to be who they wanted me to be. And when you stop doing that, it takes a lot of it's a process, right? You don't just all of a sudden start saying whatever's on your mind, but it is liberating.
It
And
it is so
you
liberating.
yeah,
And that doesn't mean that you can't dress nicely and wear makeup,
absolutely.
and like I said, we're all going to have the nuance. There are
Mhm,
some customs that should be in a room.
mhm,
You can't we can't go in there in our pajamas
right.
to a formal event. We can't do that. But it's who we are, who we project,
Yeah.
how we connect with people. It's as you said, it's exhausting when
Yeah.
you're not. When you get home and you're exhausted, it's that is an exhausting day to try to do something that's just not you all day.
And I see it a lot today is job seekers. They are trying to be, and we coach them, we teach them as consultants, as experts. You and I were teaching them, read about the company, learn about the hiring manager, understand what they care about. But some of them are taking it to the degree of I'm going to mask who I am and be exactly the person, right? Everything from uploading and redoing their resume to use every keyword to I'm going to say exactly what you want to hear. And my advice is always, if you get that job, you're going to have to be that for a long time. And it's really hard. And what I love about the personal branding process you and I've talked about is it makes it easier to find your voice. And yes, you'll have a professional voice. You'll have a voice as a mom or a dad. You have a voice as a partner or a wife or a husband.
Right.
Whatever. You have different voices, but they
Exactly.
root in the same person, the same mission
hmm
and purpose.
It's like it's becoming more of ourself and not the polished version of
Yeah.
ourself that we think the world wants us to
Yeah.
be. It's as we find our personal branding, it's more about it's actually slower. It's
Mhm.
easier. It's
Mhm.
it's it's less of what we think needs to happen and more about discovering who we actually are and want to put out there, and not copycatting somebody else because they're like this.
Right. Or asking yourself, what does my social media following want to see from me? But what do I want to share?
Right.
And having guardrails around that. I talk a lot about boundaries because I believe we should be
Good.
authentic, but not transparent. And I have a whole
That's
video
right.
on that if people want to learn. Um, and having it come from you, right? Does this feel right to me? And if it crosses a line or it goes too far or it doesn't feel authentic or real or genuine, it might be a great opportunity for someone else. It's not a great opportunity for me. And that's hard, but it
Very
is
well
so
said.
confirming, so confirming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you see we've all seen the video online where it's like, "Oh, that is so funny,
Yeah.
maybe, but I could never do it."
Right.
Right? I could never have that sort of reel or that sort of content out there. And good for them. Good for them. If they feel comfortable filming that,
Mhm.
doing that, putting it out there with their audience, wonderful. But we do have to understand what aligns with us. And
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And just because you think it, feel it, or experience it doesn't mean you have to share it. I always say that to people. It's like, okay, you got laid off. Do you have to go tell the world? Process
Yes.
first, right? There's no
Got in a
social
car accident.
obligation.
You broke up with somebody, like all the ailments
Exactly.
of life.
Oh my gosh. So mentorship is a big part of your work. Tell us, how did it become a big part of your work, and what do you see as the real benefits? I know you and I could talk for hours about mentorship, but
Yeah.
what is the real benefit, and how did you get to it being so important for you?
Thank you for asking that, because when I was growing up, I did not feel like I had a mentor. I
Mm,
didn't really know what it was. I know that looking back, there were important people in my life,
mhm.
but I always thought that mentorship was more of a program, something you signed up for, paid for, called someone. I mean, I didn't know, right? And then as I entered entrepreneurship, as I entered, owning my first company when I was in college, I realized you really do need some people around you. You need people
Mhm.
who have been here, done this. I also encountered many women, quite frankly, who weren't that helpful.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that at the time. I truly thought, what did I do? What just happened? I had no idea. They thought I was a threat, or they felt
Mhm.
something in their world, whatever was going on in their world. I had never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So very naive, I suppose, but also knowing that I wanted that positivity around me. I wanted to align with people who also wanted to share it, who may need it themselves.
Mhm.
And so that is why I started the podcast, because I thought, they had nothing to do with my businesses. It had not monetized. I mean, nothing, literally nothing. And I people thought, well, why would you do something like that if it's not related to your income or your business or
Mhm.
generating leads, or all the reasons. Nobody wants to hear about insurance, right? And I don't. I had zero interest in talking about that on a podcast. And this just kept coming back to me, Lita, because
Mhm.
yeah. So I find when talking with so many women about mentorship, and I'm so thankful for all the conversations that, I've been able to share with the world on this topic, is we call them mentor moments. And
Mhm.
they are those small moments that, hopefully someone gets from this podcast today, right? These
Mhm.
pieces. Mentorship doesn't have to be that program that I used to think it was. I want to set a good example for other women, to be kind to other women, and men and women. Obviously, we
Yeah.
should all be kind.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, in that particular space. And the irony of the focus on women is that probably about 70% of my guests have shared a story that a man has been the one who showed them the mentorship early in their career
Mhm.
and guided them, saw what was in them, helped them, and changed that trajectory. And they are sharing something that they taught them. And I
Okay.
absolutely love that message, because
Mhm.
it shows we can all work together. This is wonderful. Mentorship is important to me. It's something that I hope every conversation, that I have, you are wonderful, and, learning from you and the way you think, um, what we know should be shared. And I truly believe that, Lita.
And I agree, and I'm happy to hear you talk about your own experience, because, I don't remember if it was on your podcast or someone else's when they said, "Talk to me about your mentors." And I kinda had the same answer. I don't remember having mentors growing up.
Mm-hmm.
There were important people who
Right.
imprinted on me, but it wasn't someone who pulled me aside and said, "I see something in you and I wanna help you." I didn't have that experience. And
Yeah.
I actually wonder if I wasn't receptive to that, right? So I wasn't seeking it out because, like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that people would actually help you for no reason. Like, what do you get out of this, right?
Right.
But I didn't seek it out. And so I kind of think maybe it was my issue that I wasn't open enough or receptive enough, or into, I don't know what it was. But I
Very
see.
self-aware of you, Lita, because at any age, we don't know why we didn't do something. As a young
Yeah.
kid, it's like, no one told me this. I mean, and I
Yeah.
had no original thought about it, right? It's like,
Where was it
and
in the book?
I didn't read any books about it. I couldn't look it up on ChatGPT or something. I mean, we couldn't do that.
Well, but I see the power, and I've seen the affect of helping someone. I do a lot of mentoring in the military space. I mean,
Yeah,
I will
wonderful.
speak and give counsel and advice as often as I physically can to anyone who has served in our military. That is a
Mhm.
commitment I make, and military spouses, and I do a lot of that. It's a little bit formalized now, only because that helps with time management, but I see the power of coming off stage and somebody coming up to me and saying, is it possible to have a conversation with you about that piece of what you talked about? And I'm always open to that. Where I think it gets tricky is when what they're asking for actually becomes the part of my work that I get paid for.
That is tricky. And
Yeah.
especially, you're a consultant, you're an expert in your field, and you talk about boundaries, right? It's like,
Mhm.
how do you navigate that with
Yeah.
such a big heart of giving and generosity? And it is challenging. I I have had some challenges, not in the military, but with other folks who reach out about something, from anything, from podcasting and I mean any topic. And I could talk to someone all day long. Like, I have to be pulled out of a meeting sometimes because I just keep talking and we just keep having a great time.
Mhm.
Um, and you really do have to be very careful with that and
Yeah.
value. I sometimes, in those conversations, with a suggestion on how to move forward in a structured way, that will provide them the support that they need, because
Right.
I'm pretty confident that I can't give them the all the support they need in another 15 minutes or another 30 minutes or even another hour of my time. It's just not going to get them what they need. So I do try to suggest a direction they could go to get what they need, to kind of
I've
exit.
Yeah, I've started doing that too, and always, very elegantly, right? It's
Yes,
just to
yes,
help me understand what this would look like for you. And
yes.
when I get something back that's, I just want to know if I should take this job. Can you just talk it through with me?
Can you make the decision for me? Is what they're.
Well, or, okay, so
Yeah,
that's a conversation. I'm happy
yeah,
to have a conversation. But if it's, I really want to set myself up for a promotion, I'm looking at a 12-month horizon. Can you help me build my brand in person and online so that I can? It's like, okay, that's a little bit bigger.
yeah.
And, I have a service for that, or I can refer you to some programs that might be able to get you there. But, that's where, when you do have a generous heart, it is
Hmm.
really difficult. My first question
Hmm.
is, do you have any military background? Because that
Can I at least qualify you under this area where I
that
spend
would
all
be
my time?
that's like an automatic, but anyway. Well, and it's funny because you hear people using AI as coaches and mentors.
Yeah,
What
therapist, right? You're hearing
Yeah,
it for everything.
and it scares me, right? But how are you seeing, like, what are some of the trends around AI? You mentioned it earlier that you're seeing.
Yeah, we're all talking about it. We're all hearing about it. You and I have talked a little bit, about how we're respectively using it. But honestly, I was very resistant a few years ago, even with Alexa. It's like, I don't need Alexa in my house listening to everything. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, whenever she was surfaced, and
Yeah.
and I just don't need an Alexa. And I came home from a trip once, and my father had stayed at my home, and he's like, "You have an Alexa in your bedroom," and I was like, "Oh, okay." He moved her into my house,
Oh.
Lita, and she's now the last person I almost speak to most nights, right? But I say this because AI has been around a long time. Artificial intelligent learning machines, these models that are listening, learning, adapting, and then we can integrate them into our personal life. And that's just a small example.
Mhm.
But finding directions on our phone, GPS locations,
Mhm.
Google. I mean, all it's been around.
Yeah.
And as it evolves, for me, what is so important is finding those time levers. I want to leverage every moment of time that I can, to be able to create that meaningful life for myself. And I think that people are so worried about it eliminating and destroying humanity. AI isn't good for us. The fear and the panic
Mhm.
surrounded around it. But what I do feel that it is going to expand humanity. It is going to expand and give me back that time that I can't purchase. I can't buy it. I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Can't, it's going to give that to me, and that's going to give me a better life, in my opinion. So I'm actively learning it. I'm sharing what I know about it. My team is learning it and adapting it. Um, and I think, be open to it. Be open to it. Find those little nuances in your life that just drive you nuts and you don't want to do anymore, and
Mhm.
automate it and have AI do it, and then go read a book or something. Go do
Yeah.
something fun.
Well, and I think about, 25 or so years ago when the internet came online and everybody,
Yes.
I remember actually saying to somebody, I could never imagine a world where I would put my credit card into my computer and have it send me some. I can't even imagine. I mean, and now I do it often. Online
Yeah,
shopping
right.
is my thing.
It's
But
saved on your browser, right? I mean,
and it's crazy. And I agree with you. If AI is seen as a tool, I was just having a conversation with a client who is in an industry that doesn't necessarily embrace AI as much. And she said, I really don't need it. And I said, but you live a really busy life. She's a businesswoman. She has investment properties. She has children. She's so spread thin. It's the same thing. Use it as a tool that's going to make your life easier. And
yeah.
we are seeing, unfortunately, the numbers are playing out that women are less receptive and are embracing AI dramatically less than men. And so when we think about competitive numbers, women need to understand this technology. You don't have to learn how to code. You don't have to
Mm-mm.
program, but you have to understand the language and become literate, not fluent
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but literate around what AI is and what it is doing for the people around you.
I think that's so interesting because, like you said, we are all walking around stretched thin. I
Yeah.
mean, we're overdoing so much,
Yeah.
and we're doing that because we feel like if we can just do one more and a little bit more and a little bit more, tomorrow's going to be easier. But the problem is, we wake up tomorrow and we're doing the same darn thing, over and over and over. And it's this, and I hate to use the hamster wheel, right? Because it might not be that bad for some people, but I think that, with women, we have so many things going on in our mind. We're really good at multitasking, at having all these projects, the big life, right? And
Yeah.
managing usually everyone else's around us. And
Mhm.
and I think maybe if we'd slow down a little bit more, and we'd have that bandwidth to pick up AI and
Mhm.
say, hey, what is just one thing, even if it's,
Mhm.
carpool, even if it's the snack schedule at school, or if it's, I want to read 20 books this year. Let's figure out the best books for me. How can I cadence this? Finding those small
Yeah.
things. And to your point about, I feel like the workforce, I fear for that because, we women started out behind in the workforce, right?
Yeah.
And we suffer sometimes. We suffered during COVID sometimes with carrying some additional weights. And I'm not saying that it's, an inequality in all areas, but
Mhm.
I worry that if we don't learn, if we don't evolve, it's going to push us further away from where we could be in the workforce. So if anyone's listening, go learn a prompt or something. Go find an
Just
area to automate.
and
Yes.
just explore it,
Just
right?
explore it. Find a recipe on, yeah,
Yeah.
something.
Oh gosh, the recipe thing. I love when I talk to people and I say, "Do you use AI?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I did. I figured out how to landscape my backyard with Chat GPT." And I'm like, "Okay." And there's a lot more to it. Um,
Yeah.
so, but we also see people making mistakes, right? So when users aren't as versed on the nuance behind artificial
Hmm.
intelligence, they start putting social media posts out. They start writing to clients and customers and their staff in a voice that doesn't seem like their own. So going back to the voice conversation we had,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
are you seeing that as much as I am? The mistakes that people,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I'm seeing it applying for jobs, to your earlier job conversation. they're writing these AI emails that just and the thing is you can spot it. I bet, Lita. I
Of
can
course.
spot it when I get one. I can tell. I can open my inbox right now and look at the 5 newsletters that have
Mhm.
all just been crafted by AI, which is
Yep.
fine, but in a sloppy voice and in
Yep.
a voice that isn't, as you know, trained or skilled or adaptive to what the message is and the
Mhm.
audience. And um, it's slop. It's generic. It's oh gosh, it's not. Don't
Yeah.
it's a new skill to learn,
Mhm.
and it is a skill. It is a skill, and it does need to reflect who you are. And if you're putting something out there or sharing something that you've received with AI and it doesn't have your fingerprint on it, doesn't have your voice, it hasn't been trained by you, just think twice about it. Be
Yeah.
careful with that.
I totally agree. I teach a course about building influence in the age of AI.
Mhm.
Interestingly, I teach that course a lot to companies that are AI companies, which is interesting. And I share a story of a woman that I was getting ready to meet. We had exchanged emails. I'd checked out her social media. I looked at a bunch of her posts. And I had the impression of this woman I was going to meet as very eloquent, very polished, very conservative and sophisticated. And so I kind of brought that energy to our first, we had a Zoom meeting. And here I meet this woman and she's kind of quirky and fun and has a sense of humor. And I literally looked to make sure I was meeting the right person. I thought, did I get on the wrong Zoom call? That was so different. And
uh,
it wasn't to say I was disappointed. I just had set myself up thinking I was meeting somebody very different. And
mhm.
and it made me really kind of disappointed for her because who she was
Mhm.
fabulous. And you can have AI clean up your emails if there's typos and run-on sentences, but it really changed her voice and it changed her
Mhm.
social media presence. And I didn't know which was real. I believed the
Mm.
human was real, but that's disappointing.
And you lose trust, right? I mean,
Yes.
she was probably a lovely woman,
Yeah.
but your immediate feeling was a sense of disbelief, a sense of loss of trust, like, oh, what am I
Mhm.
walking into here? Like,
Yeah.
and that is what we have to be careful of. Is we want people to know, like, and trust us. We want the world to know who we are, like you said, with guardrails, rails, and without sharing everything. And with AI, there's so many things you can create about yourself, but the real you has to stand up at some point. The real you has to get on the podcast, has to go to the training session, has to
Mhm.
knock on the neighbor's door and introduce themselves in person.
Yeah.
And if you think about it as your best friend, if
Mhm.
if they don't if they're like, wait, what's wrong with you today? You do not sound like Lita.
Yeah.
That's that filter you need to find with your AI. Filter this for me like you are my best friend who knows me since high school, who knows
Yeah.
we have to really be careful to not lose trust through our exercise in AI.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. As we close this conversation, we've talked about a lot. Obviously, we've talked about all the different roles that we play, and that through line of your personal brand and being authentic, and knowing when to say yes and when to say no. We've talked about professional voice versus your voice, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about AI and mentorship. To someone who's listening, who might be in that position where they're wearing too many hats, right? Or they're recognizing that they're pulled in a lot of different directions. What advice do you have for them?
My advice would be is to stop thinking about how do I succeed and start thinking about how do I succeed without losing yourself,
Mm,
without losing me. That meaningful way of success, and stop doing so much and really feel the pieces of you that you want to be successful, and it'll come together. It'll come together, but trust in that.
yeah. Oh, I love that, Rainey. I mean, I know you and I could talk for hours.
I
This is our
know.
second conversation. If you want to hear my conversation with Rainey on her
Yeah,
podcast, it's
exactly.
Working Women Mentor Podcast. If you're in the Dallas area and you want to get some insurance advice, you can look her up on LinkedIn. I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you. You are just a wealth of information and just such a bright energy into this conversation. And I'm so grateful that you took time to share with my listeners everything that you know on this topic. And I just want to echo that, when you build a personal brand, when you're clear about who you are, and you obviously are very clear on who you are, that what happens is it becomes easier to be yourself. It becomes easier to know, what do you wear to that job interview? What kind of company should you apply to? What do you post on LinkedIn? And when do you say yes to a conversation? So I encourage everyone listening to really take the time, pause whatever you're doing. We're all super busy, and just take the time to learn who you are, what you care about, and how you want to go through this thing we all get to share called life. I
That's
want to
right.
thank my guest, Rani Alfers. You
Oh,
are
thank
so
you.
fabulous. And
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, definitely look on the show notes. If you're listening on another platform, please subscribe, like this conversation. If you know someone who would benefit, share it with them. There's nuggets in here that are going to help someone today. And until I see you for our next conversation, I wish you health, happiness, and all good things.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lida Citroën podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show and leave a review. It helps more people discover these inspiring conversations. For more tools, insights, and resources, visit lida360.com or connect with Lida on LinkedIn. Until next time, remember, your influence has the power to make a real difference.